Alright, so this is Mafia Jinx. Sorry, I'm trying to get an angle where you can see it. And I want you to read right there. Oh, if it's gonna stop. There you go. This is people's solution for homeless people. This is horrible. And when I speak about this, I get treated like I'm a horrible person for saying it, or like I made it up. Let's press play.
Yeah, we're literally talking about politics right now. All right, it's time for second thought. We're going to talk about the homelessness crisis.
Billions of dollars to mental health and the homeless population. A lot of
Billions of dollars to mental health and the homeless population. Well, what mental health? Most of us have post-traumatic stress disorder. Why do we have post-traumatic stress disorder? Because of how we're treated. We're assumed to be guilty. We're assumed to be horrible predators. We're assumed to be schizophrenic. And, well, for most of us, our mental illness is post-traumatic stress disorder. Overwhelmingly. And these guys complain that we're spending billions on programs that don't work, that aren't working, and they're blaming the homeless for it. No. We're not getting the help that we need. What, you think that mental health, going to a therapist, is going to get us housing? No, that doesn't work. They run us around in circles. You've gotten to see. Since 2022, when I'm assaulted and I have to try to turn it in as a homeless person, I have to turn it into, oh, come on, I'm trying to put this in a way, I'm trying to set this up so that I can record it and still, I apologize for that. So, there we go. So the homelessness issue and the mental health issue, it brings up mental health and homelessness together as if every homeless person is schizophrenic. And of course, this, mind you, this is a black man. Okay, who's making these insinuations. I want you to take the time to take homelessness out and insert the word black man. Okay, now the person sitting next to him is a white woman. I want you to take that out and insert the word white woman. Well, it doesn't feel very good then, does it? Meanwhile, I've spent my whole life protecting primarily black people and women. Yeah, that's no joke. Don't get me wrong, I spent a lot of time protecting all of these other peoples that definitely need it. But primarily, women and black people are the ones that are constantly shoved in my face as poor them, poor them, poor them. No, not poor them, all right? They're not the only people who can be victimized. I've seen white women and black men out on the streets.
don't want to take the programs. A lot of them don't want to get the help that is necessary.
Don't want to take the programs. You mean programs that are set up to fail. We go into these places because we're being abused. The first thing we need to do, oh God, this sucks, is be able to turn in on our abusers without fear of being further abused by people who want to assume that we're mentally ill drug addicts. And what are these programs for? You got to hear Claire earlier on tonight speaking about this. She's in Colorado too, speaking about this shit there. Now the thing is that calling somebody mentally ill doesn't make it okay to harm them, to victimize them, to vandalize them, to murder them. I mean, we have homeless people here who are schizophrenic, and sure, they scream, but people cross the street to get in their faces and threaten them. And I'm sure there's been more than one assault over that, but it doesn't matter. They don't matter because they're quote-unquote mentally ill, right?
You can't give them a choice. Either you take the resources that we're going to give you, or...
You can't give them a choice. Huh. You can't give them a choice. Well, we didn't have much of a choice to begin with. There's lots of drug addicts in houses. There's lots of quote-unquote mentally ill people in houses. This lady here admits to dealing with mental illnesses. But what mental illnesses? Is it PTSD or are you schizophrenic? Do you have PTSD from being abused? Is your abuser calling you mentally ill to try to insinuate that your PTSD is schizophrenia? Very much so. When you're homeless, people just assume the worst. You don't get an honest day in court. No public pretender is going to do their job for you. And these programs that are supposed to help us, what if we're being victimized? Okay? What if it's not an issue of all this other crap that you want to put in there? My mental illnesses are caused by the abuse. Housing first. The first thing that my predators did was force me into homelessness, and they used Natalie Bollinger's disappearance as their excuse to do so. It's horrible. I mean, I'm a disabled person. Because I'm autistic, people feel very liberal about taking advantage of me, ripping me off, and they know what a desperate situation I'm in because the police won't do their job, CARE won't do their job. They pretend that they're going to. But what do they always talk about? Housing, housing, housing. And all these years, I still haven't gotten housing now, have I? These are mandatory reporters. Do they focus at all on the abuse? No, they change the subject. The sheriff's department tells them to defer. I spent 15 months in jail because a man who threatened to kill me repeatedly, threw things at me that could have killed me, and came at me not once but twice with a friggin' pipe. Yeah, that dude came at me and I spent 15 months in jail. That man apologized to me afterwards, told me that he told the DA he didn't want to press charges, but regardless of that, that man did apologize to me. He said it was because of alcohol, and, you know, it's a situation where the DA's office should have done the right thing. But how is any of this going to work when nobody's looking at evidence because they already know they're just going to roll through, get the case out the door so they can get paid and move on to another homeless person they can sweep under the rug? It's horrible.
You decide that you're going to be locked up in jail. That's the way it has to be now. Or involuntary lethal injection. Yeah.
Okay, so let's think about this. Because you're homeless, you should automatically be put in jail or endure lethal injection because you're homeless. This is literally what these people are saying. Are you hearing this? You want to talk about how America can't be compared with the Nazis? Well, look who the Nazis went after first. The homeless and the mentally ill, literally. And what did they do to these people? That, if they were lucky. The stuff that they did to the quote-unquote mentally ill in Nazi Germany is horrible. And you hear these people saying that because somebody is homeless, that they must be mentally ill, must be a drug addict, should be forced into jail. We're already being forced into jail. As soon as we start getting a leg up, as soon as we have busted our ass at that shit-paying job to get enough to get almost up and out, we get arrested on trumped-up BS because people hate seeing the homeless. They don't want to stop homelessness. They just don't want to see it.
Something, just kill them. It's a really bad time to be homeless in the U.S.
So what that guy said is just something that I feel like a lot of...
Now, this is a situation that we are having to deal with. You get to see how many messages are sent to me telling me that people are going to kill my friends and family over the Natalie Bollinger situation. And then there's the garden variety hatred from literally everyone in the United States. Even the few people, like this lady who's speaking up for us, you know, she's been homeless herself. She's trying to speak up. She's trying to say something about what it is that we're having to deal with. You know, we should not be killed for being victimized into homelessness. And 80% of us were forced into homelessness because of fleeing abuse. Okay, let me put that in perspective for you. These girls that you feel bad for because they were raped or beaten by their ex and so on and so forth, where do they end up? On the streets with us. How about that schizophrenic that was living with your grandma for a while? You know, he's your cousin and all that, so same grandma. Well, where is he now? Now that grandma died? Well, he's probably out on the streets with us. What about your dad, the one that raped you, and you finally had some help turning him in? When he was released from prison, where's he released to? We got so many people on the streets that match what you have in the houses. You have pedophiles in houses, there's pedophiles on the streets too. That doesn't make every person in a house a pedophile, and it doesn't make every person on the streets a pedophile. You got mentally ill people, all sorts of different mental illnesses, living in houses, and you have people with all sorts of mental illnesses living on the streets. That doesn't mean every person on the streets or that every person in a house has mental illnesses. Like, these people are talking about forced imprisonment, lethal injection, literally killing us. This is something that when I speak out about this, how this is the only effective solution that they keep coming up with, well, who else had that final solution? Who else had that effective solution? That guy's name was Adolf Hitler.
People genuinely, they believe, they look at homeless people like an infestation, like they're like roaches that need to be exterminated. They talk about them like they're the biggest nuisance in their day-to-day life. They're like, man, I hate these homeless people, making me uncomfortable. I wish they would just disappear. Unfortunately, like, that's a common sentiment that I see. People treat homeless people like shit. It's just wrong. Yeah, they have no empathy for them most of the time.
The tents that we see on the street, the encampments, people sleeping under
They're
freeway
illegal and they
overpasses,
bulldoze them.
That's just the most visible manifestation of a far more pervasive catastrophe.
Most of the people that I knew in Boulder, Colorado that were homeless had jobs. For every one alcoholic or drug addict that I saw out there flying a sign, I knew 10 people with jobs that were homeless. We can't get our shit together because everything that comes along with having a house, we don't have. Like the right to go to the friggin' bathroom. Holy Christ. The right to go to sleep in most places. The right to defend ourselves when assaulted, when attacked. A lot of stuff that you guys in houses take for granted, you've never had to live the other side of it. You don't have to deal with the police harassing you because somebody doesn't like the way that the situation looks of you existing as a homeless person. And of course they say, oh, they're taking them to get help. No, they're taking them to get locked up, and then they're going to dump them right back out on the fucking streets with less resources than they had to begin with.
This entire, what I refer to as this entire shadow realm of homelessness, people sleeping in their cars who are doubled up in the overcrowded apartments of others, who are languishing, really trapped in these squalid extended stay hotels and motels and rooming houses where they're paying double or even triple what they would pay for an apartment down the road.
And motels take advantage of this as well. Like, they know that there are a lot of people that are desperate for a place to stay, usually people with young children, and they're like, oh, well, you can stay at our motel, and then they like charge them a ridiculous amount. Yeah, weekly stay motels with no credit checks. Exactly. I can't believe evangelicals think this is a good...
Let me tell you about the motel here. I believe I want to say it's called the Shiloh. Now, I rented a room there for 3 nights because there was a woman who, her and her friend were going to help me because I was homeless and because of the abuse over the Natalie situation. They were going to help me to turn it in. I rented that room for a couple of nights. That lady ended up being full of it, and her friend was a scammer who, like, he was basically a flat earther type, you know. And I'm not trying to make fun of the flat earthers. I'm just saying that I can't be spending a bunch of money renting a hotel room so that somebody who's a scammer can try to scam me the whole time. But the story there is, even though I was staying there, I was told that I needed to leave because they assumed I was a homeless person. And I explained to the guy, dude, I rented a room here. He didn't believe me at first, but he checked it out. And sure enough, and there were further issues there, but we're not going to get into that in this video. People in America are taught to hate the homeless. Everything they're not allowed to blame on black people anymore. Everything they're not allowed to blame on Mexicans anymore. Everything that they're not allowed to blame on homosexuals anymore. All of that stuff, all the stuff they're not allowed to blame on Jews anymore. Well, that all comes down on us homeless.
Policy. Jesus didn't ask us to kick out the beggar out to the streets. Yeah, but they don't see these people as beggars. They see them as, like I said, an infestation. Like, they don't even see them as humans anymore. And they tend to characterize them as mentally ill drug addicts. And while, yes, some of them...
Exactly. Like, in the evidence that I've been showing you, it's obvious that, what was it, April 15th of 2024? In that paperwork that I was showing. So April 15th, I sent this lady, not this one, but the lady at TFCC who's supposed to be an investigator, I sent her multiple screenshots of the people threatening to kill me and my friends and family. I showed videos of people threatening to kill me and a lot of other stuff. And it's a lot of hatred. We're assumed to be mentally ill drug addicts. And then, of course, anybody who wants to assault us just assaults us and threatens us and says, oh, he's a drug addict. I saw him doing drugs. Like, no, you didn't. And this is one of the reasons that I try to record everywhere. Is because people will make false accusations. And if you didn't record it, somebody might listen to them, and you're homeless, so you must be mentally ill. And you get to see all of this mentally ill crap that they keep pushing. When the government says mentally ill, what they mean is schizophrenic and delusional and violent. That's how they paint it. You're out to hurt yourself or others because you're mentally ill. So stop using that word, please. When your brother wants to win an argument that he's losing badly, he just starts screaming at you that you're mentally ill, so there. It's stupid. You don't have to do drugs. You're automatically assumed to do drugs. When I had to try to turn in the situation where a man put stuff in my drink that should not have been there. Now, of course, that happens all the time, doesn't it? We get to hear from all these rape sites about how we need to protect women from these roofies. Well, it wasn't roofies that they put in my drink. It was something that keeps you awake. Now, when I tried to turn that shit in, did they take it seriously? Fuck no, they didn't. They didn't care. They wanted to send me to drug rehab instead of calling the police like they should have because somebody gave me drugs without my permission. And that's never okay. That is never okay. I've heard women brag about drugging their husbands. Drugging their husbands so they can get some sleep. Or drugging their husbands so they can go out and party a little bit. Yeah, in that situation, it's still wrong.
Or, as that article said, that's just not the case. The working homeless are real, but that argument plays into productivity is the measure of a person's value. Yes, but I think that pointing that out is necessary because
I was working homeless until I screwed up my back moving an 800-pound lathe. Those of you who are men probably know what that is. Those of you women who know what that is, I'm proud of you and I'm glad you exist. Now, at the time that I hurt my back, I was working at a place called Stone Lighting, and I was passing out blankets to the homeless until 3 a.m. Stone Lighting was outside of Louisville, and of course, I was passing out blankets in Boulder on Pearl Street and walking drunk people to the warming centers and homeless shelters, and sober people to the warming centers and homeless shelters, and a lot of other places where they could get help too. So the thing is that this argument that we're all mentally ill and we should be locked up and we should be killed, I'm tired of hearing that, first of all, and I'm tired of the American public turning a blind eye while we are murdered in record numbers, while we are not allowed an honest court date. 81% of us incarcerated were homeless when we were arrested. That right there is the defining factor in America, and whether or not you are guilty or whether you get a trial. If you're homeless, your guilt is assumed and they will have a monkey trial. I've been to real trials and I went through my trial, and I got to tell you, between the two, well, the only thing that kept it from being a complete dog and pony show is the fact that Judge Amanda Benjamin wasn't a complete, I'm not even going to use that word. I just want to state for the record that I am glad that it was Amanda Benjamin who is my judge, instead of that piece of crap who wanted to pretend to be a judge. No, if you're just going to assume somebody's guilt, you should not be a judge. You should not be a sitting judge if you've assumed somebody's guilt, and if you're going to assume that anything that somebody says must be a lie. Yeah, that's so completely fucked. Or if you're going to allow a disabled person to be victimized and sent to the hospital on a mental health crap without that person having any representation whatsoever.
It really dismantles that argument that homeless people are just lazy or bad with their money, because you can see somebody who's employed, they work a full-time job, still unable to have a place to stay. And whether that's because they don't make enough, because rent is extremely expensive, especially in certain areas, but also you have to be able to prove that you can pay rent through credit scores. And some people, their credit is, some people don't have any credit at all. There's plenty of reasons that somebody could struggle. Capitalism does its best to work against our better nature to help one another. Yep. And I feel like that's why people tend to harbor such negative, intense feelings towards homeless people, because they're trying to shield themselves from feeling bad for them. They're trying to, be like, I'm not a bad person. It's normal to hate homeless people. And everybody agrees with me, right? It's almost become like a small talk conversation.
Yeah, normal to hate homeless people and normal to hate the mentally ill. It is normal to deny a homeless person their rights by insinuating that they are mentally ill. And they might have PTSD. Hell, they might have schizophrenia. However, does that make it okay to make false accusations or to beat them up or to send them to prison for something someone else did? Or to just run around and pick up some poor sap with schizophrenia every time that you can't find the guy who did it? Well, that is so screwed up. And this is a reality for a lot of us out here being homeless. We see schizophrenics being treated like this. But guess what else? If you tell on the police for this, you get treated like that. You get treated like you're schizophrenic because you told on the police.
I've even heard this, it's not just online, it's almost like saying, wow, the weather really sucks today, doesn't it? Just casually mentioning to another person, ew, did you see all those homeless people outside on the way here? Yeah, I was scared. I was terrified. That would never happen to us, upstanding members of society. They probably want to rob me. They probably want to harm me. That type of sentiment is unfortunately extremely popular.
So when I get messed with, is it over things I actually did? No. It's over things that people want to assume that I would do. Because I'm homeless. Because I'm homeless and a male, they want to assume that I must be quote-unquote mentally ill and schizophrenic, that I must be a child molester, that I must be a rapist, that I must be a murderer, and none of those things are true. But it doesn't matter because Americans hate the homeless.
Popular, when in reality most people are one bad week/medical emergency away from homelessness. And they also build a resentment because they're like, well, I pay my bills. I'm responsible. I'm a responsible adult. It's hard, but it's possible.
Let me tell you about being responsible and paying your bills. I lived with a guy named Phil McPhee. I paid him rent every month. He did not pay the rent to our landlord. I also had the bills in my name. Now, they didn't pay the bills and didn't pay the bills and didn't pay the bills. They didn't pay the rent, and they also didn't give me the money they were supposed to, since the bills were in my name. And of course, I went homeless for like 3 months so that I could take every penny and earn the money to pay back what was owed. So, like, here's the thing. Just because somebody is homeless and just because somebody has debt doesn't mean that they wanted that debt. I'm a disabled person without a family who gives a shit. So I have no supports. I'm having to do desperate things because I can't ask my dad for $50 to help cover rent. There was one time in my life that my dad pretended he was going to help me. But he's such a control freak. He even screwed that up.
Like, okay, for you, good for you, I guess. Here's your medal. You know, the audacity of victim blaming always angers me. Yeah, they're like, oh, they want to be homeless. They don't want help. Why aren't they at the shelter?
I didn't want to be homeless. What I wanted was to be left alone by Natalie Bollinger and her friends who were stalking me and harassing me and all sorts of other crap. I didn't want to be homeless. I wanted the abuse to stop. I wanted the threats to stop. Like, I've been forced into homelessness repeatedly over the Natalie Bollinger situation. I was living with some people in Denver, Colorado. Well, Inglewood, Colorado, I should say. And I was living with those people, minding my business. You know, but I can't go to Boulder, Colorado and see my older brother without people treating me like I'm a pedophile or a murderer or a rapist. No, that's not cool. And when I try to get help, I'm treated like I'm a stalker, all because I'm homeless. I'm denied the right to show evidence of the abuse that I've had to go through. And take a look at this. I want you to look at this. Head injury. All right? Yeah, that really happened.
I guess they want a trophy for that. Yeah, they have this type of mentality where they're like, well, I've never been homeless. I'm struggling and I've never been homeless. So get your shit together. That's the attitude that they have. It's disgusting. It's inhumane and it's ignorant.
There have always been people in this country, you know, here and there who...
She's allowed to say it. I'm not. I'm homeless, so of course I must be mentally ill and delusional and lazy and all that other stuff. You know, here's the thing that sucks about being disabled in America. You know, you want your grandma to be able to have her disability. You want your husband or your brother or your son to have their disability. But you don't want a disabled person who's homeless to get disability. No, they must be freeloading. That's always the excuse. And we always get to hear this crap about how we have a Corvette around the corner and it's got a drop top. And we really live in a mansion and we're panhandling just to pay our rent at a mansion, but we really make hundreds of $1,000s a day and blah, blah, blah. Like, Jesus, do you even hear these stories? You know?
Who did not have stable shelter for various reasons. But homelessness, as we currently know it, mass homelessness in this way, really erupted during the 1980s.
When Reagan came into office, it was on a plan to undo the New Deal and let the rich get away with murder. And much of that plan was built around making the line between getting by and hitting rock bottom as easy to trip over as possible. To that end, Reagan gutted the entire social safety net. Funds that went towards building public housing disappeared. Poor people were thrown off welfare and food stamps. And predictably, all this made the poor poorer, while landlords and rich people got tax cuts. Nothing ever trickled down, and homelessness exploded.
I was only homeless for 1 to 2 days, and that was enough for me to have infinite empathy for people who can't find reliable shelter. Yeah, I was also homeless. I was homeless in winter in Colorado, sleeping in my car. As a transgender man, I was turned away from most shelters in my city the last time I was homeless. Yeah, a lot of people fail to understand that shelters aren't a perfect solution because people get turned away because of certain things like, discrimination against transgender people, but also they get full. I know there are some shelters where if you have drugs in your...
I'm going to stop this right there. I just want to state for the record, we have a shit ton of transgender people on the streets who are severely mentally ill in the fashion that you guys want to use it. We have transgender people who feel extremely entitled and will show up and scream and shout and be boisterous and try to fight to be the center of attention. These people just want to go to bed. Please, will you please not make an issue about being transgender for one night? Could you not throw a tantrum as if everybody is out to get you because you're a transgender for one night? The fact is, I have never seen a transgender person thrown out of a warming center or a homeless shelter for being transgender. I have seen many transgender people kicked out of warming centers and homeless shelters for being violent assholes because they didn't get exactly what they fucking wanted right when they goddamn wanted it. I will stick up for the LGBT community. I will stick up for transgender folks, but it depends on the transgender folks we're talking about. Are we talking about somebody who just happens to live that as a lifestyle? Which, by the way, homelessness is not a lifestyle. Okay? It is not a lifestyle. 80% of us were victimized into homelessness. The additional 20% who quote-unquote choose to be homeless, most of them didn't choose to be homeless either. These are the predators that you dropped off on the streets with us.
System, they won't let you stay there. They do turn away homeless people pretty frequently. Why would you choose to be unhoused if you had another option? Yeah, exactly. Who in the history of ever has been like, no, I don't want a comfortable place to sleep at night? Fuck that. Like, nobody. One shelter might allow a person for a while and then kick them out during the day. Oh, yeah, that as well. Yeah. And then they have no beds when the person comes back again when they open at night. Yeah.
Also, you got to carry everything you own on your back. The stuff that keeps you from freezing to death. They might have more people at that shelter than they have beds, and they turn people away, and if you didn't carry your backpack, well, lo and behold, you might freeze to death tonight. However, you can't just leave your backpack anywhere. You can't just leave it at the warming center or homeless shelter. You get kicked out in the morning, you got all that crap. You got to carry it around with you. If you've got legal issues, like you're being victimized into homelessness, that doesn't mean that your predators ever stopped victimizing you. I mean, I can show you video after video after video of people continuing to assault me over Natalie Bollinger by name, even though they found the guy that killed Natalie Bollinger years ago. He's in prison.
It's unreliable. The reputation of homeless people, unfortunately, due to sensationalized news stories, is they're all crazy and on drugs.
And also, not hearing our sides, because all you have to do is say, oh, he's crazy and on drugs. Natalie Bollinger pretends I'm crazy and on drugs. Turns out she was crazy and on drugs when she fucking died. Then we got the police. I got to try to turn the police in for this situation. What do? Oh, they run around Chapel, Nebraska. Sheriff Scott DaCosta ran around Chapel, Nebraska telling everybody I was schizophrenic. And when I tried to turn him in, and the state troopers were supposed to send somebody to investigate, instead Scott DaCosta showed up to assault me with the state troopers. It was goddamn glorious bullshit. I've had to deal with this in the state of Nebraska, state of Colorado, state of Oregon, state of Washington. Like, I get victimized everywhere I go, and people don't recognize how, yeah, these people on the internet who are threatening to kill me, that's a human being behind the keyboard doing that. We've also got many situations where these people showed that they were literally looking at me while they were on the internet. So, I mean, they're literally staring at me in real life while messaging me across the internet. And yes, that needs to be taken seriously, but I'm homeless, so it must be a delusion.
And ready to stab anybody who walks past them. Like I said, there's a lot of news stories that come out about somebody being assaulted, and then people in the comments are like, of course it was a homeless person. Vast majority of homeless people.
The majority of assaults between homeless and the public are assaults against the homeless, just so you know.
Are just people who fell on hard times. They're not crazy, strung out drug addicts who are just, waiting at the drop of the hat to assault somebody. People react and remember negative stimuli a lot more than, neutral or positive. So most of the homeless people who aren't hurting anyone and are just struggling, you're not going to know about their existence because...
Well, people know about mine, but they also know that I speak up. Like, we're not allowed to speak up about our abuse, or police will arrest us, and the mental health system will help them to get away with it. Those people who stick up for rights in these videos, one thing that I've noticed in nearly all of these videos is that these are not homeless people that they're sticking up for. I also noticed that there's a real big thing in quote-unquote comedy right now. A few years ago, it was all the rape jokes, and they still make those. But the real big thing right now, which has always been common, is tearing down homeless people. But they're putting the mentally ill thing in there heavy. Like, they're trying to push like all of us are out here drinking our own piss and stuff.
Nobody gives a shit. The only thing that people give a shit about is the headlines of homeless people attacking people who are housed. There are a lot of unhoused people who are totally not violent at all.
And then when it turns out that after they've painted us as a predator on the fucking news and on the internet, when it turns out that we didn't kill Natalie Bollinger, it was somebody else named Joseph Michael Lopez, or you find out that it wasn't actually Sean who raped or molested her, it was Tim Beeson and Ted Bollinger, yeah, it makes a lot of difference. But I'm a homeless person, so nobody looks. Who did Natalie Bollinger accuse of actually doing that shit? Well, according to multiple people who were Natalie Bollinger's friends, not just myself, that would be primarily her father, Ted Bollinger.
Also in the U.S., violent offenders are far more likely to be released into the general public. Nonviolent drug offenders are easier to maintain in the facilities. A lot of unhoused people are nonviolent and normal people with jobs. Yes. It's simple. The cause, the rent is too damn high for the most part. Most people can't afford their rent. And if they can, it's like...
They aren't actually taking into account the fact that many people are victimized into homelessness, and their predators use the term mentally ill to do that, to get away with victimizing them into homelessness, to victimize them out of their money, or worse. Like, it's a situation where you're forced into a desperate situation if you don't have parents and family that care at the very, very cusp of turning 18. You got to have something to get started on. When you're especially stuck in rural Nebraska, every kid that I went to high school with, my graduating class, they all got, the kid who got the least amount of money got $5,000. That's to get started on life. You know how much I got? Nothing. And I didn't expect to get anything because I didn't have a family. I was working my way through high school.
It takes up most of their income. It gets to a point where people can't afford health care. Like, people can't afford to pay for, their health insurance, their car insurance, their phone bill, their internet bill, just stuff like that. It's just like majority of people spend more than half of their income on their rent. When I was homeless, I had a full-time job, minimum wage. Yes, me as well. I also had the same situation. I was working at a cafe, and I had to live in my car.
Now, we're only halfway through this. I'm going to stop this video because it's almost 40 minutes long. And I'm going to tag her in this so that she's able to see it. I'm not trying to hide it from her by any means. I think that what she's saying here, she's doing a great job of speaking up. She's very well articulated. If she was, in a situation where she was having to look over her shoulder because people were literally screaming hateful stuff at her earlier in the day, or hit her in the head with a bottle or hit her in the side with a pasta can or something like that, she would definitely not be speaking the way that she is now. She'd be speaking much quicker because she had just experienced trauma. Now, that's the thing with a homeless person experiencing trauma and having to try to turn it in. You know, if we're speaking differently, such as an autistic person might, or possibly somebody with, well, it doesn't matter. The fact is, we're still human beings. And when we're talked over and disrespected and assumed to be schizophrenic, we're showing signs of PTSD. We're showing signs of trauma, and you're treating us like we're making it up. It isn't helpful. So, this lady calls herself Mafia Jinx, and we're gonna put a link there so that you can see this video too.